All right, today we're talking about the excretory system. There are two body systems that I want to point out, and that this will be a difficult thing on your test. Excretory and endocrine. Okay, now I am a kinetic learner, and so for me, it's easiest for me if I do like a hand motion or something. I'm also a audio learner. So when I think endocrine, I think things that stay inside my body. Okay, and I always tend to do this hand motion, right? Endocrine, inside. Endocrine. Excretory is things that exit your body. Okay, so excretory, exit, or some people said in earlier classes that external made sense to them. So you just have to remember that the EX helps you to know whether it's staying in or out of your body. Okay, because unfortunately a lot of people miss this question on their test just because they didn't really look at the entire word. They just looked at the first letter. Okay. Now, before you start writing all of this down, I'm going to point out what I'd like you to write out. Okay. I would like you to write out removal, what it removes, and then waste travels at some time. Now, don't write that exactly. Write this. Okay. The excretory system, the function of the excretory system is removal of gas and liquid waste. Okay? So that's that point number 1. It's the removal of gas and liquid waste.
With that? Yes.
It's the removal of gas and liquid waste. Okay? You need to write down the second bullet point does not go under major organs. This is still under the function. This is what it removes. And then you also need to point out on the third one that it travels at some time in the blood system. Now, if we're talking the blood and it circulates in the blood, what body system does this closely relate to or closely work with? Yes, sir. Circulatory system. So you should already be writing in closely works with, and that's going to be the circulatory system. There's a lot of body systems that this will interact with, but circulatory is one of the bigger ones, specifically because it's always going to be filtering out blood. Okay, it's going to be filtering the bad stuff out of the blood. So when we talk about carbon dioxide, we're pulling out carbon dioxide because remember, if we keep that in our bodies, we are going to get carbon dioxide poisoning, and then you die. Not really. Kind of, I guess. And then we're going to filter out water, salt, urea, and uric acid as we keep going. Okay?
I'm not done writing it yet.
Interesting.
Now I'm done.
Okay, so one thing that's a little bit unique to the excretory system is when you look at these major organs, you're not sitting here thinking, wow, those all kind of work together. Because the kidneys and liver, yes, they kind of work together, but lungs and liver don't really, and neither do skin and lungs. And so this is kind of one of those catch-all body systems that it's kind of like an overarching umbrella. It covers a lot of things within. So this is like, excretory is our large umbrella one. When you get into higher level anatomy, you're actually going to break this down into urinary and then lymphatic. And so it's actually going to be 2 different body systems. But for what you need to know now, this is all you got to know. We good? Okay. So the urinary system, okay, is made up of the kidneys, the ureter, bladder, and urethra. And yes, that's how I remember it, is it's ureter. Okay. So what's happening here is that we have the... Oh, no, hold on one second. Okay, so you have the kidneys on both sides. So if you've ever watched a boxing match or a boxing fight, you'll notice that when the referee meets with the 2 boxers, they're going to give them a list of rules, and one of those rules is no kidney shots. The kidney shots are on the back, so they're right about here, so they're asking you not to hit this spot. A big reason for that is that if you injure a kidney, you can really hurt yourself without even knowing it because you've got to be able to filter your blood. Okay? So you've got 2 kidneys, and they have 2 major blood supplies that come and they fuel them. And remember, when I think of kidneys, I think of filter. I like to think of it as like a Brita filter. How many of y'all know what I'm talking about when I say Brita filter? Okay, you put the tap water in, it goes through the filter, and then it comes out with yummy drinking water at the bottom. Okay, and that filter catches all the icky gunk that you don't necessarily want in your drinking water.
Makes it like taste bad.
Yes, and then that's what you're getting with your kidneys. Your blood's going in all dirty and gunky, and then the kidneys pull out that gunk and then send back good, healthy blood. Yes, sir.
There's this thing Miss Levine got in her room, and you pour in water, and then it comes out like this good smelling stuff that she got. It's like this
Humidifier.
A diffuser. Yeah. I have one as well. That's not exactly the same. It's more of like a Brita filter, but kind of. So then you have the 2 blood sources that come in. They hit the kidneys, and then the ureters take the waste down to the bladder. The bladder then fills that to, once it hits a certain amount, it's going to trigger the brain to say, hey, that person needs to go to the restroom. And then the bladder is going to, remember the bladder has muscle around it. What kind of muscle do y'all think it's having? Do you control whether you go to the bathroom or not?
Wait, yes you do.
So,
It's a
voluntary. Yeah, voluntary. So, then you're going to have, and then finally your urethra is what causes the urine to go out of the bladder and into the world. Okay? So, urinary system. So this is a picture. This is actually a really good drawing of what the bladder looks like.
let's do this again.
Okay, so waste is filtered from the blood, collected in your urine, collected as urine in the kidney. Your urine leaves the kidneys, goes down to your ureters, and is collected in the bladder. Okay, this is what your bladder looks like. Remember, it's like a balloon. It can expand and get smaller based on how much is in there. Okay, and then finally it goes out the urethra to the world. Okay, your liver. Your liver absorbs drugs and other poisonous substances. Now, when we're talking drugs, yes, we might be talking illegal drugs, but we're also talking like prescription and over-the-counter. And for this part, we're even talking as like caffeine and like Tylenol and things like that. To your body, those things don't matter. It processes them all the same. So, like, your body doesn't be like, oh, this is an illegal drug. Oh, this is an over-the-counter drug. Oh, she's just drinking Coke. No, it's all processed the same way. So, the liver, the big thing on the liver is that it changes their chemical structure to make them less toxic. Okay? That's the big thing with the liver. So if we have someone, I'm not talking like someone who drinks a soda every day. I'm talking about those people who drink like a 12-pack of soda a day. Those people's livers have to work incredibly hard to keep their liver working because they're constantly having to do this process of changing from their chemical toxicity to very toxic to lower toxicity. Does that make sense? So the liver has to work really hard. Remember, it creates what's called bile, and it's excreted in the digestive tract. Okay? Now, what's really interesting, we talked about this the other day, that's interesting about the liver, is that it's the only organ that can regenerate itself. So, if Cartoon needs a liver transplant, they can cut out half of my liver, put half of my liver... They can cut out half of my liver, put half of my liver in Cartoon, and leave half of my liver in me, and then both of our livers would regrow. Okay? Now, it's the only organ in our body that does that. However, we're not talking like it will regrow. I accidentally killed half my liver, the other half's going to regrow. No, that's not how it works. Okay? It's still an organ and it still can die, even though it has that regeneration ability. Okay? Poisons to the liver are alcohol, drugs, and even medicine. Okay? So again, this could be things like caffeine and pretty much anything that's not a natural occurring thing. So like water is not going to be considered a drug. Okay, does that make sense? But high processed food, that's going to be harder on the liver, things like that. Any questions so far?
Can I finish writing this?
Lungs.
I'll just do the one thing.
Lungs. Okay, remember, again, we've talked about this one. So if we're talking about the lungs, what other body system closely associates with this? Respiratory system. Okay, if we were talking about the liver, what body system closely associated with that one? Digestive system. So you see the excretory system actually works with all the body systems pretty much, because what it's doing is it's removing waste that all the other body systems create. Okay? So remember, we talked about how your air goes down into your trachea, into your bronchial tubes. Bronchial tubes split into bronchi. Okay? That's how you get bronchitis, is a swelling. Any word that has itis at the end means a swelling of. Okay? So arthritis is a swelling of the joints. Bronchitis is the swelling of the bronchial tubes. So if your bronchial tube is normally this big and it swells, you may only be able to get that much air through it. That's why when you get bronchitis, you tend to feel like you're a little difficult to catch your breath, things like that. It's harder to go out and run, exercise, things like that. So when we talked about respiratory system last time, we talked about putting in oxygen. This one is talking about removing carbon dioxide. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'll wait on you. Okay, so the air comes into the lungs. Okay, it's going to remove the carbon dioxide at the same time as the blood comes into the lungs. Okay, blood comes into the lungs. It's going to remove the carbon dioxide and then allow the lungs to push the carbon dioxide out as we exhale. Does that make sense? Yes? So when we talked about respiratory system earlier, we only talked about putting oxygen in. Now this is the process of removing the carbon dioxide. Okay. Our skin. Now this is one, also what body system should we think of when we think of skin? Integumentary. Okay, good. Our skin is a part, when we perspire, meaning when we sweat, we are getting rid of water, salt, and other toxins in our body. And so the main thing is that this is helping our body regulate the concentration of salt. Yes, you can be too salty, literally. Okay? I know, I'm so funny. I know. So yeah, but this is why when you go out and run or something, why your dog probably likes to come up and lick your legs after you're done running. It's because your dog is saying, oh, that tastes like salt. Okay? And so it's also, remember we talked about this when we talked about integumentary system, it's also a cooling off process for the body. So remember, we want to keep the heat out of our internal organs if you're starting to warm up. So it sends your blood to the surface of your skin, aka why you get red, things like that. Do you have a question?
It froze. It's on freeze.
We're still on it.
I know, but I'm just saying the one you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going freeze.
Yes, sir.
Freeze.
Sure.
You're gonna miss out.
All right. That's it. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Do animals, do their livers regenerate too?
I don't know the question. That's a great question. I don't know if animal livers regenerate. Yes.
Is Teague yellow because of all the chemicals in it?
It's because of your urine should not really be yellow. It should be clear. And it's more clear because it's got a higher concentration of uric acid. So if you're drinking enough water, urine should pretty much be clear, because then it's going to have a higher concentration of water, making the uric acid not look quite so yellow.
My cousin
Okay.
did